Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have with us one of the greatest musicians of all time. This gentleman has been on the scene for over 60 years and has worked with many greats from John Coltrane to Nina Simone, Wes Montgomery, Sonny Rollins, Dexter Gordon, and Herbie Hancock, to name a few. He is a drummer, educator, and he's a 2021 NEA Jazz Master, and I'm so happy to have him on today. Please welcome Mr. Albert Tootie Heath. Brother, how are you?
Thank you so much. What a great introduction.
Well, listen, man, thank you, like I said, for being on the show. You've been on the scene for quite a while. You've worked with so many great musicians, Mr. Heath, and I'm interested in knowing more about your humble beginnings. I understand that you are from Philadelphia, and you come from a famous family of musicians, your brother Percy and Jimmy. But tell us, man, how you got involved with playing drums and your background, because I understand that you're self-taught.
Well, up to a point, but I had a lot of information and inputs from my colleagues all around the world. Jimmy Cobb and all those guys were wonderful to me.
Yeah.
And Ben Riley and all those guys.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I had a lot of help in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I got interested in music because of my brothers, of course. Percy was the main one, yeah. And then Jimmy came later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because Percy was the first one, the oldest.
Right.
And I just realized, I heard on the news the other day that one of those Tuskegee Airmen died. And, Percy was a Tuskegee Airman.
That's right, man. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I was just talking about that with somebody. Yeah.
It is, man. And we used to get on the airplanes with him, and he would tell us what was going on, up in the cockpit.
Yeah.
He knew all the stuff up there, and he said those people were so racist and so horrible on him coming up as a pilot. They didn't want them guys to be pilots. They want them to be mechanics.
Man, that's something else. Yeah, that racism is alive and well, and it takes a special man to come through that. But your brother was a brilliant bass player, man. Just incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. He put that airplane stuff down. He said he never wanted to do that again. He became one of the major bass players of our time.
Yeah, yeah.
It happened it seemed like it was overnight, but I know it was hard for him. But he advanced real fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Next thing I know, he was recording with Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and all those guys. He was on the records.
That's incredible. Now, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Heath, what age did you start playing drums?
Well, I started in high school. I must have been about 16 or 17 years old. I tried to join the band, the high school band at Ben Franklin High School in Philadelphia. And there was a drummer there named Benny Proctor who was graduating. And Benny had the chair, the drum chair. And I had to wait until he finished his graduation. And then they allowed me to play the drums, start on the drums. But I started on trombone to be in the band. I wanted to be in the band, so the guy said, well, teacher said, well, you play something else. How about the trombone? And I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I tried it, but the trombone was making my lips swell up because I wanted to practice and learn how to play it overnight.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen.
I also wanted to ask you something that I found really interesting. When you were in high school, you accompanied Thelonious Monk. You actually played with Monk when you were in high school?
I think I was out of high school. I was about 18, so I was done with high school. But my friend named Jimmy Bond is a bassist that lived in Philadelphia. That's the guy who got me on a lot of things, like with Nina Simone and things like that. But Jimmy Bond was a Juilliard graduate. And when he went to school in Juilliard, the same time Nina was in there. So they got to know each other. So when she got ready to do her album, she called him and he called me. So that's how I got the chance to be on Nina's recording.
Yeah, yeah. Man, do you remember what was it like playing with Thelonious Monk? I mean, were you scared? Was it frightening? Or were you like, am I prepared for this to play with a giant like that?
Every night I was scared to death every night because I just knew he was going to turn around and smack me or something. But
Yeah.
it didn't go down like that at all. He was very nice. Sat out in the car with Nika in the in the Bentley.
Mm-hmm.
Sat out in the Bentley until time to come on, and then he would come in the club, not take his hat or coat off, and sit down on the piano and just start playing. And me and Jimmy had to figure out what he was playing and try to join him. And we did, because we both knew some of Monk's compositions, not all of them, but most of them that he would play. We remembered that we knew him. So it was quite an experience for me to be there every night. And Jimmy would call me during the day and say, man, you know one thing? And for him, he said, I never knew what key Monk was going to play in or what the song was. I had to look at his left hand and try to figure out what he was playing, what key he was playing, and then what song was he playing.
Yeah.
But with me, I didn't have to do any of that. So we would discuss how different it was to play with Thelonious with anybody else.
Yeah. Did you, Mr. Heath, get a chance to play with Bud Powell?
No, but his brother Richard.
Yeah, Richie. Yeah.
Richie was still around Philadelphia, so I played a few gigs with him. But Bud had moved to New York before I even got started to play.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Now, you hooked up with John Coltrane. I believe that was your debut or one of your first recordings. And I know your brother, Jimmy, and him were very, very good friends, along with Benny Golson. But what was that like, man, your first recording working with Coltrane?
Well, that was more scary than Thelonious, because it was only Thelonious. But with Coltrane, he had Johnny Splon, was one of the best trumpet players around Philadelphia at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He had Shahib Shihab. He had Mal Walden on a few of those recordings. And let's see, who else? He switched piano players once or twice. He had Mal Walden, and I'm trying to think of who else. I can't think. But anyhow, that was more scary because it was more people. And those guys were well known. And, you know, I was nobody. And even Coltrane was nobody. You know, nobody knew who he was.
Right.
But we were in a band together before that with Shirley Scott playing the organ and Bill Carney. We had a group called the High Tones.
Okay.
And Coltrane was featured saxophone player with the High Tones. And he used to be requested by Bill to get up on the bar and walk the bar and play. And he hated it, man. Oh, man, he hated it.
Really?
He would get up on the bar, but he would play more saxophone than I've ever heard in my life. Walking around on the bar, not honking one note like most guys would do.
Yeah.
And getting the place all excited. He would just get up there and almost blow his brains out.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait a minute, hold on. Hello? Hello? Yeah. Here, B. Here, take it, will you? I'm in the middle of this. You got it?
No, I didn't hear what you said.
I said, take it. I'm in the middle of this thing.
Hello?
I don't know, man. There's somebody selling something.
It's okay, man. It's all good. But, you know, interesting story. Your brother, Jimmy, told an interesting story about Coltrane, how, you know, when he was with Miles, you know, he played great. He says then he got with Thelonious Monk, and Thelonious Monk opened him up harmonically. So when he came back to Miles, he was a different player. But I mean, working with giants like that, Mr. Heath, you know, Coltrane and Thelonious Monk, what do you think you got from them, or what do you think you learned most from working with people like that?
Well, I learned how to play with accompany a piano player. I know how to accompany a piano player with a bass player. I learned that about playing with Thelonious. And those songs were so unusual, some of them. And he loved the drums, so he featured the drummer quite a bit. And so I learned a lot about music playing with Thelonious those few times I had the chance to. I played with him in Philadelphia at the Blue Note for about a week.
Yeah.
In New York, I played opposite him with Cedar Walton Trio.
Wow.
With Reggie Workman or either, who was the other bass player? I can't remember the other bass player, but it wasn't David Williams. He hadn't come to Cedar yet.
Okay.
It was, man, I can't think of who the other bass player was, but it was Reggie. And we had a trio that opened for Mingus about 3 or 4 weeks for Mingus. And then we opened for Thelonious for about 3 or 4 weeks. And you're talking about interesting every night, but I wasn't playing with those guys, but I would see them and see how they interacted with the other musicians, especially Mingus. He had a whole bunch of drama that was going on with him. And I found out later that Mingus had some mental problems.
Yeah.
I found that out later. I didn't understand why it was happening, but I found out later.
Yeah.
But Thelonious was he was a victim of something too. But Thelonious, he would medicate himself with alcohol or either drugs or something. But Mingus didn't do that. Mingus would come in and just be nuts.
Yeah.
And if he medicated, he did it at home. But I saw those guys like every night for about 4 weeks, each one of them.
That's
at the 5 spot in New York. Yeah, it was unheard of. Nobody played that long in those clubs anymore.
That's incredible. And I guess after that, you also hooked up with, you mentioned earlier, Nina Simone. What a great artist she was, man. What was it like working with Nina, Mr. Heath?
You know, I didn't know Nina at all, and she didn't talk to me very much because she and Jimmy were good friends, the bass player.
Okay.
They was classmates, and she had gone to Juilliard as well, but I think she quit. She couldn't stand to be there much longer because they didn't acknowledge her greatness or her potential greatness. They didn't acknowledge that. So she was just another piano player, singer, which tried to play some classical piano, and they didn't like what she was doing.
Wow.
And, yeah. So she didn't stay there that long. But Jimmy Bond, who was the bass player, he was a graduate of Juilliard. So he was the one that introduced me to Nina. And Nina didn't talk to me very much at all. And we rehearsed for this album we did, the only album I've ever been on with her. We rehearsed at Don Shirley, the piano player, had an apartment up over Carnegie Hall, which I thought was unusual because I didn't even know how to get in Carnegie Hall. And here's a guy who had an apartment upstairs over Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
And I don't think there was any Black people even cleaning up the apartments up there.
Wow.
But he had an apartment and a big grand piano in the middle of the floor. You know, he was also a Juilliard graduate. And Jimmy and Nina and him, they all went to school together. And that's how they got together to know each other. It was from Juilliard. And then Nina decided to do the album. And we rehearsed in his, it was a huge apartment up over Carnegie Hall. And matter of fact, I had never played in Carnegie Hall. I still haven't played in Carnegie Hall. I went there to see a lot of people, but I never played there.
You never got that opportunity. Yeah.
Never had.
Working with her, man, as I said, she ended up being just one of the greats of all time. And also not long after that, I guess for a couple of years, you played with your friend Benny Golson in his sextet, that group that he had. Man, what was it like working with Benny, man?
The Jazz Tet. Well, Benny was always very much like he was a little older than me, so Benny was more like your dad playing with your father, you know, because he was very conscious of what was going on with the drums and what he expected you to do and how he wanted you to play his music. And Art Farmer was the guy who didn't say much at all. Art didn't talk much. And the other person was Curtis Fuller sometimes, and Tom McIntosh was there in the group.
And then eventually McCoy Tyner came into that band too, right? When you were there?
McCoy was there when I came in, and then he left, and a guy named Mickey Tucker came.
Mickey Tucker, yeah.
Yeah, after McCoy. McCoy left and went, I don't know where he went, but he left the group. But let's see who else. And Cedar came too. After McCoy, I mean after Mickey Tucker, Cedar came into the group and played the piano.
Yeah, that was
interesting. Yeah, that was like being in school, you know, with Benny, and he had arrangements, and Benny had some specific things he wanted from the drummers to do. And I was able to do it for a few years. And then the next thing I know, Brother Yusuf came along, and I said,
Yusuf Lateef.
Yeah, I'm going with Brother Yusuf.
Yeah.
But it was more freedom than Benny's stuff was arrangements, and it was a lot of, what do you call it? I had a lot of things to do with Benny to play his music.
Right.
The way that he wanted it.
Yeah.
Played. But then when Yusuf came along, it was like freedom.
Yeah. Opened you up.
Yeah, I could be anybody that I wanted to be, because it was Yusuf, and Hugh Lawson was the piano player at that time.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it was Danny Mixon.
At
the end of my stay with Yusuf. Bob Cranshaw,
yeah, the bassist, Bob Cranshaw, yeah.
Not Bob Cranshaw. Bob, he just died recently too.
Okay.
He's not Bob Cranshaw.
Okay, yeah, because that's the bass player.
He's Bob. So yeah, this guy's a bass player too. Bob Cunningham was his name.
Bob Cunningham? Okay.
Yeah. And Bob Cunningham, he just died recently.
Yeah.
But Bob was the bass player, and Kenny Byrne was playing the piano.
Okay.
And that was the Yusuf Lateef Quartet.
Yeah, and a great quartet it was. You know, you made me think of something. You also, I guess, right around that time, maybe 1960, 61, you played with the great Wes Montgomery on one of his best recordings ever. What was it like working with Wes, man?
Well, Wes was another guy that was quiet and didn't demand much at all. He just did what he did, and if you could find a place, you know, to join in and contribute to whatever he was doing, he was happy.
Yeah.
So on that particular session, my brother Percy played the bass, and Tommy Flanagan played the piano. So there I was in some serious company.
Yeah.
Again, and didn't know it. I didn't know it, but Percy I knew, and Tommy, but Wes I didn't really know who he was.
Right.
I saw him around in the clubs and all, but I really didn't know. The rest was Wes was a serious inventor of the guitar.
Yeah.
A lot of guys try to do that now, what he did in those days.
Yeah. George Benson was heavily influenced by him, you know.
Yeah, George was, but George could also sing. Wes didn't sing.
Right.
I don't know if he could or not, but I know he didn't. I never heard him singing.
Right. You know, Mr. Heath, I was going to ask you, you've played with so many great saxophone players. We're talking about some of them now. You also work with Dexter Gordon, man. What was that like working with Dexter?
For years in Denmark.
Oh, wow.
I was with Dexter at the Montmartre. We played with Dexter, was Kenny Drew and Niels Henning.
Yeah.
Myself, and Dexter would come, like, we would play maybe a week with Dexter, maybe a week with Johnny Griffin. This guy who owned the club loved his tenor saxophone. And he had Joe Henderson for a week and maybe 2 weeks. Then he had Dexter for a couple of weeks. Then he had Johnny Griffin for a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
Then Dexter would come back again, because Dexter was actually living in Copenhagen.
He was living there, yeah.
At the time. So Dexter was like a serious favorite of the club owner. So whenever he couldn't get somebody like Clifford Jordan for a couple of weeks, he got Dexter. He got my brother for a couple of weeks. He loved the tenor saxophone. And he had my brother for a couple of weeks. And then he had Don Cherry for a couple of weeks, yeah, with Abdul Ibrahim.
Yeah, Dollar Brand, yeah.
Yeah, that's when I got a chance to be with him for a couple of weeks, man. That was magnificent.
Wow.
Experience. And I still love him right now today. I love his music.
Yeah.
As much as any of those other people you mentioned.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Also, Mr. Heath, you played with the great Sonny Rollins. I always look at he and Coltrane as probably two of the greatest tenors ever. But what was it like working with Sonny? And I mean, what are the differences playing with maybe those two guys? You know,
well, Sonny was more interested in the rhythm.
Okay.
And Coltrane was interested in whatever you played was fine with him. If he chose you, whatever you were doing back there was okay for him. That's how he could have Alvin Jones, who was super creative at that time.
Yeah.
And he had some other guys too, besides myself. But Sonny Rollins was quite different. Sonny Rollins had some specific rhythm stuff that he was interested in. And Sonny was more adventurous than Coltrane. Coltrane stuck to all the rules of playing and all the songs, you know, you play, you have to do this or do that. Sonny Rollins was not like that. Sonny Rollins could do anything at any time. And he could lay out and not play at all and wonder what's going on with you. You know, but Coltrane wasn't really like that. Coltrane was more conventional, I'll say. But he was more concerned with the chords, the changes in the song, the chords and all of that. Sonny Rollins didn't care much about any of that. He could do it, but that was not his concern.
Yeah.
But he could do it. He was incredible. I did a couple of weeks with him in Copenhagen as well. He was there. Actually, we did which is available right now. It's what do you call it? Me and Kenny, Drew, and Sonny, and
it's a DVD of that. I think it's a show from 1968 in black and white or something like that. Isn't that right?
It's on the computer. You can see it. It was a live performance with Sonny.
Yeah.
Sonny and Kenny had some problems going on from when they lived in New York up on that hill. You know, both of those guys were during those years were doing some things with drugs.
Yeah.
I think Kenny had been accused of doing something really strange to Sonny, and Sonny wouldn't even look at him. When we played together. They wouldn't even look at each other. If you look at that video, you notice Kenny is looking down at his hands and Sonny is not even looking at the piano player at all. So there was something going on personally between those two guys that had happened. I'm assuming that it happened when they lived up on the hill in Harlem.
Yeah. And I remember Sonny had several sabbaticals. You know, he would stop for a while, stop playing, and he'd go to the bridge, you know, practice and work out, I guess, ideas and new things. He would just stop. Maybe he stopped hearing certain things and he would just go and work them out. But he had several of those. Did that happen when you played with him?
No, he had already done all of that.
Yeah.
He was basically back playing very hard and long and serious. When he came to Denmark, he played for, you know, really hard for those 2 weeks we would play together.
Yeah.
And also, let me think of somebody else that was doing that. Miles did that too for a while. He quit for about 7 or 8 years. Right. And then he came back. And when he came back, he changed his music drastically.
Yeah.
But Miles was very, he was a creator of this music that we played.
Mm-hmm.
He created music, man. He created the style. He you know, there's nobody who came along yet with a trumpet, you know, after Miles Davis.
Yeah, Mr. Heath. Yeah. They said that Miles changed the course of music 5 times. You know, it was just always something new every decade, you know?
Always, yeah, always. And what really made him really aware of the changes that was necessary was that he didn't want to do the same thing over and over again. He didn't want to do that. So when he saw, we played a concert and he saw Sly Stone, and he saw all those people, and he noticed how Sly Stone was dressed, and Miles was going to Ellie Clark, this guy in Brooklyn who used to make the suits for him. And he saw Sly Stone had on cowboy pants and cowboy hats and all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he saw that and he saw all of those people. His music changed right there. And that's when he got him to me and all of those guys, Gary Bartz. And
yeah, right around that time, late 60s, from like Bitches Brew on, he changed his wardrobe, his music, everything, you know?
Everything, that's right. And he kept going. He was going all the way until he died.
Yeah.
He was changing. And when he had Tony Williams and them guys,
Ooh.
that was a whole different era.
I tell you, a lot of them say that may have been his best band. I mean, Coltrane and Cannonball and those guys, but he says when he got Wayne Shorter, Herbie, and those cats, man, he said that group was one of the greatest, quintets of all time. And everyone still talks about Tony Williams. His name constantly comes up, when I talk to drummers.
I tell you, Tony was like, at the time when I met Tony was 17 or 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he was still there in Boston. And he hadn't graduated from high school yet. I think he came out, and I was playing with JJ.
Yeah, JJ Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. So JJ asked me, would you let this kid come up and play? And I let Tony come up and play the drums. And man, I had never heard nothing like that. That was so different
from
what we were doing. So when he came to New York with Miles, I said to him, what's it like playing with Miles Davis? Because I had a pretty good relationship with him because I had a loft in New York and he used to come by in the evenings and we'd be playing after the club things were closed. We would be playing, he would come by in the evenings and he always had some stuff to say. So I had something about him. I said to him, I said, Tony, what's it like playing with Miles Davis? And he said, Miles told me anything I played is okay. And that's the only person that ever told him that.
Mm.
In other words, do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Whatever that is you're doing, I like it.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it. Do whatever you want to do. He said he had nobody ever said that to him. And it gave him all of this freedom.
Yeah. Mr. Heath, I guess the drummers that I guess even came a little bit before you, I'm sure you were checking out, Max, Art Blakey, Roy Haynes, Jimmy Cobb, and those guys. They had a tremendous influence on you, didn't they?
Absolutely. And Jimmy Cobb was one of the nicest human beings you could meet. When I first came to New York, Jimmy had just come from Washington, D.C., and I think he was playing with Dinah Washington at the time.
Yeah.
Him and Wynton Kelly and Keita Betts.
Yeah, Keita Betts, yeah.
Yeah, that was Dinah's trio.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy was so nice to me and helped me out. On Saturdays, they used to have a jam session with a drummer named Phil Wright that lived in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And Phil Wright would have 2 or 3 drummers at his apartment, and they'd be playing on practice pads, and we'd be reading music, from books. And Phil was a great reader, and so was Jimmy Cobb and all those guys. And I was really learning how to keep up and read the part and be creative, and these guys were already there. And so Jimmy was one of them. And Jimmy is a guy that he lived with named Khalid Makhti, was another drummer that was a good reader. And he and Jimmy lived together. Yeah. So Jimmy took me up to the Bronx when I came to New York. He said, man, I want you to be in this drum group with these guys. And I went up there, man, these guys were opening these books and reading these pages like it wasn't nothing, like they were reading a newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard for me at first, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of self-taught, and I had to teach myself how to do all of that. And but Jimmy was involved in the group. I think Alvin came up there once or twice, and Alvin surprised everybody because with his playing didn't match what you would see in these books.
Wow.
You know what I mean? His concept of playing the drums was so different until you was in the shock, you know, when you saw him sit down and read all those rudiments and stuff.
Yeah.
Which he didn't use them conventionally. Max Roach was another person that I was always interested in. Now Max would have all these groups, and Max was a serious civil rights person.
Yeah.
And wasn't nobody else into that at the time, not like he was in being a band leader. So Max, one time he had a demonstration at the Musicians Union about the unfairness of the way that they would disperse, let's see, parties and social things. They would give them to the white guy. They would always give it to white guys. So Max said, man, let's go down there and let them know that this is unfair. And we members of the union too. Why don't they send us on some of those kinds of things?
Mm-hmm.
And so Max got me and a whole bunch of other guys, and we went down to Union, and it made a change in whatever their decisions were. So they today it's more balanced that they give out those casuals, they call them. And we call them casualties. But that's what they call them.
Yeah, yeah.
And private parties.
Right, right.
And Max was the cause of us getting some of those. Plus he had a problem with the record companies as well.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to record him because of his stance with the civil rights movement. He was always being he appeared to be angry about the way that the politics was going towards jazz musicians.
Yeah, and Mingus made records like that too. Charles Mingus made some protest records like that as well.
He did. Now Mingus, like I said, Mingus was another person that I was in the 5 spot opposite Mingus for about 5 or 6 weeks. So I got a chance to see him at his worst.
Yeah.
Not at his best, but he would be, some dramatic stuff would always be going on.
Yeah. Now you also played with, how'd you hook up with Herbie Hancock? I think you were on that recording, The Prisoner, which I love. How'd you hook up with Herbie, Mr. Heath?
Well, Herbie, I was on a boat coming back from Denmark. I had decided, I had had enough of living over there, and I was going to come back to New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I got this telegram on the ship. I'm halfway there, and the telegram was from Cliff Jordan, who was one of my dear friends. And Cliff said, man, if you want to come to the Avant-Garde, when you land, come down to the Avant-Garde. We're rehearsing with Herbie to open up down there in about a week or so, so. And it was Pete LaRocca, who was a drummer. And then Pete became a lawyer. And then I think he quit playing for a while. And then he got back into it.
Yeah, Pete LaRocca, yeah.
But Pete was playing the drums with Herbie. And Pete didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't like it. I don't know whether the music or him and Herbie didn't get along. I don't know what it was. But Cliff had asked me if I wanted to come down and play in the rehearsal with the band. I told him, yeah, it was Johnny Coles. It was Clifford Jordan and Garnett Brown. And Buster, of course, was there.
Buster Williams, yeah.
Yeah, Buster was the bass player.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined the band and I made the rehearsal, and then we opened at the Avant-Garde, and then that became a real job of mine for, man, about 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
I stayed with Herbie for a long time, and Yusuf came along, and I joined him and left Herbie.
Yeah, yeah. You were busy, man, during that time. I wanted to ask you your take on the avant-garde movement. You know, players like Cecil Taylor, Albert Eiler. Were you into that music?
I loved it, but I didn't have the nerve to do that because
Okay.
I learned how to play, you know, kind of conventional stuff.
Yeah.
And all my interactions was with those guys who played conventional music. It wasn't with Cecil and all of those guys. But I love Don Cherry was one of my favorite.
Yeah, Don's good. Yeah, and Ornette Coleman and those cats. Yeah.
Ornette and his group. Oh man, I loved it. I used to be in the club every night.
Wow.
Me and Billy Hart. We talk about it now whenever I talk to him. We were the only guys who really liked Ornette and showed it, because most guys that learned conventional playing, they didn't like that, you know.
Yeah.
It was not true music. It was something else of his own, and they didn't necessarily like it. So when Leonard Bernstein came down to the 5-spot a couple of nights, and they wrote in the newspaper that Leonard Bernstein had joined a group of people who thought that Ornette was a genius.
Yeah, I heard a story about Leonard Bernstein having his ear up to, I think it was Charlie Hayden's bass or something. He was just trying to figure out what these cats were doing, you know?
Well, and Sonny Rollins used to come down and hide in the phone booth. In those days, they had telephone booths that the light would come on when you go in.
Yeah.
And if you put your foot in the door, it would let the light go off, and you could have the door cracked, and you could listen to what's going on outside. And Sonny used to come down there and hide in the telephone booth and listen to what Ornette was doing. And, you know, when I realized some of those people that came down to the 5-spot were people that I thought very highly of. And for them to have the audacity to like Ornette Coleman and his music.
Right.
I thought that was quite like a giant step. And my brother is the one who introduced me to all of that, was Percy. Percy loved Ornette. Percy actually made an album with them too, with Shelly Manne. I think Shelly Manne, Percy, and I don't know who the piano player was, but they made an album with, I don't think Don Cherry was on it. It was just Ornette.
I remember that turning point with Ornette Coleman. I guess it was 60 or 61, I think it was The Shape of Jazz or The Shape of Things to Come or something like that. That was a very big recording for him.
I remember the name of that, what you just said.
Yeah.
Man, I loved Ornette, you know, and I loved his music. I loved his concept. And I would have loved to have played the drums like he played the saxophone.
Yeah.
But I never got a chance to do that because I was always with people who demanded a certain thing of the drummers.
Right.
Those are the people that I played with, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Heath, I wanted to ask you about a special individual, one of my favorite musicians. You played with him, you knew him, and a film was made about him, and you were in it, the great Lee Morgan, the documentary, I Call Him Morgan. Tell me about Lee, man. What was it like working with him? And I guess you knew him pretty well, and as I said, you guys played together. Tell me about Lee Morgan, man.
Yeah, we played together a lot in Philly.
Uh-huh.
Lee was from Philadelphia.
Right.
Lee was so young until his brother's name was Jimmy Morgan, that didn't play anything. Used to bring him to the clubs because he was too young to come in the club. He wasn't even 18 yet. He was like 16, 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He could play as good as any of us.
Yeah.
At that age. So when Jimmy used to bring him to the clubs, and I ended up playing with him a few times, and then he told me one day, he said, man, I want you to hear this piano player. He's 12. I said, 12, man. you know, that's kind of young.
Yeah.
He said, we got on this, at the time, it was the streetcars in Philadelphia. We got on the streetcar and we went to North Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to this beauty salon. And this kid was in the back room in the beauty salon. And it was his mother's beauty salon. It was McCoy Tyner.
Yeah, his mother, that's right, owned a beauty shop. McCoy is McCoy's something else.
So he was back there laying on this couch. And then when we got in, you know, Lee said, man, I want you to hear this guy play, man. So he got up and got on the piano and started playing. I said, oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Hey, this guy, when he couldn't have been more than 13 or 12 or 13 years old, I'm not sure, but he could play the piano then. I mean, really, and Coltrane loved him.
Later
on
did.
in life.
Yes, he did. Well, you know, like I said, we lost McCoy last year, and it's stated that McCoy Tyner is the most influential pianist of the last 60 years. I mean, so many have been influenced by him. That left hand of his, you know, and how he developed the fourths on the piano. But yeah, McCoy was something. And McCoy talked about being influenced by Monk and Bud Powell. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
But yeah, you played with Lee, and man, that's a shame what happened to him with he and his girlfriend Helen at that club Slugs. Messed so many people up. I had Billy Harper on the show.
I think he was down there when it happened.
He was there when it happened. Oh yeah, he was actually there when it happened.
I wasn't there when it happened, but I had played in that club a lot.
Wow.
And not necessarily with Lee, but with other people.
Yeah.
But she came in the club. They say, who used to talk about it all the time is Mayburn, because Mayburn was down there. Harold
Mayburn, yeah.
Yeah, Hal said that she came in and Lee was sitting with his other girlfriend, and she had been through all of this with Lee to get him to get off of the drugs and clean up his life and start a new life. And when he reached that point when he didn't need her anymore, she didn't understand that. So he got this new girlfriend, and he's sitting there with her. And this girl, Helen, came over and said something to him, some words. I don't remember what it was exactly. And Lee said something to her and told her to get away from them, you know, to go somewhere and go get away from her. And she said, okay. And she went outside and she got the gun. I don't know where she got the gun from.
Yeah.
But she went outside the club, and when she came back, she had it. And it was only a few minutes, you know, so maybe it was in a car. I don't know where it was, you know, but she went out and got it and got right up on him and shot him.
That's so sad, man. That's so sad, you know.
And, you know, during that time, it was one of them blizzards in New York, so the ambulance took forever to get there.
That's what they said.
Could have saved him, I think, if they could have gotten there.
Oh, man.
Sooner.
He was only 33 years old, Mr. Heath.
He was young, yeah.
So much talent, you know, and, you know, but, you know, I wanted to ask you also about your brothers, man, Percy and Jimmy, how you guys had your little group together. I guess you guys did some stuff, from like 1975 to 78 or 79, you guys put out some recordings, or you at least played together. Let me ask you a question. Do you find it easy playing or working with family members, or because it's almost like an unspoken language, or do you find it maybe a little more difficult playing with family members?
I found it more difficult with both of my brothers because they both wanted two particular different things from me that I could or could not give them, because I'm busy trying to be creative and do what I think is right.
Yeah.
And Jimmy was writing all the music, and he wanted everything to be a certain way. And Percy, Percy was in love with Kenny Clark. So he wanted me to be like Kenny Clark. I couldn't do what Kenny Clark did, even if I tried.
Right.
But I couldn't get anywhere close to it. And I always felt like I would never satisfy him because of his needs for a drummer. Like, and when he used to tell me all the time, he said, you know, Connie K's beat is lazy. And it took me all these years to figure out what he was saying was lazy. Connie had more of a Latin type of cymbal rhythm than, you know, Connie was from the islands. So he had that island, what do you call it? It was a cymbal rhythm that the islanders play on the cowbell.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Connie K used to play on the cymbals. And Percy always considered that to be lazy. And I don't know what he meant by that. But now that he's gone, you know, I could ask him. But he meant, I think, in as far as the time was concerned, it was not in the place that American drummers play.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, I tried my best to accommodate him with that, and it was always very difficult.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, it was always, he was the arranger, so he was expecting something. So man, it was hard working. I quit one time.
Really?
Yeah, I quit, and I went to LA. And that's when I moved to LA. I quit the Heath Brothers because it was too difficult.
Yeah. You know, I was talking to one of my good friends who runs a jazz club in Maryland, and there was a place called Left Bank. And he was just talking about you guys played there. He said, y'all were just cutting up, you know, bantering each other on stage. He said it was great, man. He was just telling me a story about it. But yeah, you know, it's interesting. People think sometimes working with family members, it should be easy because you guys know each other so well, but that's not the case, actually, you know?
Not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
But that club, the Left Bank, I remember that in Baltimore.
Yeah, there you go, man. It's in Baltimore. That's right. Yeah, everyone that you can think of, from Ahmad Jamal to, you know, Billy Harper, Billy Hart, you know, everyone has played there. I think Horace Silver, all the great musicians were there. Hey, I wanted to ask you about this 2018 Lifetime Achievement Award, man, that you received. That's fantastic. Tell me about that.
I don't even remember that one.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago. You received
this one. Yeah, this one that gave me the National Endowment.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for that because my brother got it years ago, and they left me out, and I figured out they didn't like me. I said, man, how could you give it to them and you don't like me? So I didn't get it. So my wife said it came right on time.
Right on. Look, brother, congratulations. It is well-deserved. Your resume. And when I was looking at just the people that you played with, I don't really know of any drummer living that has a resume like yours, other than maybe Roy Haynes. And Roy's almost 96 and still going. But yeah, you played with some giants, and I was so happy to see that you got that, along with Terry Lynn Carrington. And someone, I'm trying to think of the other person that it's a book. Henry Threadgill. Henry Threadgill, yeah.
Yeah, Henry Threadgill. And what's his name?
Shaq.
McFerrin. What's his name? You know, that sings.
You talking about Bobby McFerrin?
Yeah, Bobby McFerrin. Didn't he get it?
I don't think so. This guy, there was another guy, but this guy I think is like a writer or something like that. But I know you guys are like the three.
Oh, he was the DJ.
Or something like that. Yeah.
He was a DJ in New York, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, congratulations on that, man. I think the ceremony is going to be, I think, in April or something like that.
Yeah, if they lift this virus up, it's going to be in San Francisco, but otherwise they're going to have to do it virtually.
Let me ask you, Mr. Heath, when you're home just relaxing, you know, taking it easy with the wife, what are you listening to, man? Who are you playing, or do you just put on sometimes some old jazz records, or are you listening to any of the new guys? What are you checking out these days when you're at home?
Well, I'm definitely a fan of reggae music. And
really?
I'm not embarrassed to say that.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Because it sounds so simple to do, but it's not at all to consist and do that consistently through a whole piece. Now, you know, I used to be in a reggae group in LA, which never got much credit because I'm a jazz guy.
Right.
And so I was in a group, and I got the guys' pictures up here, hanging up here, that I love those guys so much, but they're all gone.
Yeah.
But we had a group called Macaw, like the bird.
Yeah.
And we played we rehearsed maybe once a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
But it was reggae, and they were jazz guys playing reggae, which was not pure.
Yeah.
So nowadays, what I listen to is just straight up, reggae without any jazz influence.
Man.
And I listen to it every Saturday on public radio. They have a reggae show. And now on Fridays, they have a jazz show, which I hear a lot of music that a lot of young people that I've never heard of playing what they call jazz. And jazz has changed so much because of what the ambition is. What we're striving for is different. Most of these guys are coming out of schools, and they are really school-learned players, and they sound like that to me. Where in reggae is some pure, straight-up music that's played in Jamaica.
Yeah.
It's come from the culture itself. And, it's a little different from jazz. Jazz is like, to me, personally, I feel that it's all school taught now. And it doesn't sound original like Coleman Hawkins or Don Byas or Charlie Parker. Or, it doesn't sound the same. It's different. It's coming from a whole different place now. So
you just said something really interesting. Miles Davis talked about that too. He said, what I was learning from Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, I wasn't learning in no school at Juilliard.
No, he quit Juilliard.
Yeah.
He was in there for a while and then he quit.
Yeah.
And I get it because for him, he didn't need what they were offering him. He didn't need that. He was hearing some other stuff.
Yeah.
But with me, the jazz has changed so much until I'd rather not really listen to it. And I'm sorry to say that because they call me a jazz master now. So what I say about it is that the jazz that I'm listening to is not of today. It's the jazz of yesterday.
Yeah.
Like the people of yesterday, like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
Those were some bad brothers.
Yeah, man.
They came along to make it possible for you and I to sit up here and do this what we're doing.
That's right. That's right. So, Mr. Heath, I'll do a little game here with you in our last little segment together, a word association game. I'm going to name some drummers, and I want you just to say the first thing that comes to your mind, and what do you think of them, okay? All right, we're going to start with Philly Joe Jones.
Incredible. Was my hero, man.
Yeah.
I love this guy. I love him, man. I love his playing. It was so different. And you know what was so great about him? Philly Joe, a lot of people don't know this, was setting up Buddy Rich's drums for him. Buddy Rich loved him so much. He allowed this guy to be the roadie, to set up his drums. And Philly Joe got a lot of stuff from Buddy Rich, technically.
Yeah.
He learned how to do a lot of stuff that these young drummers don't know anything about.
Right.
But Philly Joe is one of my top. I love him, man.
Yeah. Next name, Max Roach.
I love Max Roach's innovation. I love Max Roach because he invented so much stuff.
Yeah.
He invented, because he came along with Charlie Parker and all those guys, and his music changed like overnight in front of you.
Yeah.
But I love Max Roach, Roy Haynes, if you're going to stick him in there.
What about Art Blakey?
Oh, Art Blakey was special too. I love Art Blakey.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very special. And Roy Haynes, you got to get him in there.
Oh, well, that question. What about Jack DeJohnette?
I love Jack because Jack was very musical.
Yeah. And
I think he still is. And I really like Jack's concept of playing the drums.
Yeah.
In a group concept, with the other people.
Yeah. And last name, Alvin Jones.
Now, Alvin was an innovator that I hadn't heard anybody come along and do what he did with Coltrane yet.
Yeah.
What it was is that Alvin had a way of accompanying that no other drummers did, but he could accompany you in such a way that it was very influencing and very exciting. I used to watch Alvin down at Birdland with Harry Sweets Edison.
Oh, wow.
Now, is that a difference? And Alvin, Sweets loved it, and Alvin would be doing exactly what he did with Coltrane, and Sweets loved it.
Mm.
And that was before Coltrane. You know, he hadn't even opened up yet.
Yeah.
But Alvin was quite an inventive guy.
With those polyrhythms, man, you know?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there's one person that I want to add to that. You don't have to say anything about this guy, but I put him right in this class. Albert Tootie Heath. You're in that class too, my friend. And I love you, man. Your body of work, your drumming, and you definitely are an influence. You know, you and your entire family, what you've given to music has just been tremendous for the last 60 years. And it's just been an honor, man, and a pleasure to have you on Jazz Talk today. Hang on, I'm about to close out the show.
Okay.
Well, you've heard it from the great Albert Tootie Heath. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.